Hello and welcome to the Real Women, Real Business podcast with myself, your host, Shauna Lynn Simon. And today we have a very special guest here. We've got Lindsay White joining us. So listen, Lindsay is an absolute rock star in the leadership coaching industry. She is a people strategy expert. She is a best-selling author. She is the person that you want on your team as you're building your team. So I'm going to let Lindsay take it away here, but her company is High Voltage Leadership. Be sure to check it out. We're going to talk a little bit more about what she's doing there and share a little bit about her journey. But Lindsay, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, thanks. It's a real pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about what brought you to High Voltage Leadership. Like, where did this come about? How did you get here?
Yeah. So high voltage is very meaningful to me. It's actually part of my life purpose statement. And my purpose in this world is to be the high voltage extension cord that connects others to their own inner brilliance. That's what I'm doing in this world. And when I left my corporate HR role in the summer of 2017, I knew that I wanted to deepen my coaching skill. I had already been working with senior leaders and C-suite executives, designing people strategies and also coaching them on their leadership presence and practice. And so I basically went back to school for about 14 months after I left corporate. And part of that process in actually deepening my coaching skill was working with my own peers. And
Right.
part of that is designing your life purpose statement. It's a tool that I use with my clients today. And it became deeply, deeply meaningful for me because not only does it, really describe what I do in the world, what I'm here to create, but it also is about me. It's about my values. And so when I was challenged by my peers to set up my own coaching and consulting practice, high voltage was clearly the thing not only that I needed to be, but my brand needed to be. And so that's how high voltage leadership was born.
And that's a wonderful story. I love, you got so much experience that you came into this with because you were working in HR. So this is not as though you just woke up one day and said, "Hey, I'm going to just,
No.
do some leadership stuff." Like you got the background in this.
Yes.
So it's like everything that you were doing was building you to this point all along.
100%. Yeah, I leverage the skill that I have from almost 20 years working in, whether you want to call it HR, you want to call it strategic talent management, people and culture, all of those. I mean, those all describe essentially the same thing, but I use all of that experience, starting back from, 2005, 6, 7, when I started in recruitment. I still use those skills. I work my clients in designing and executing recruitment strategies. I work with my clients on organizational development, organizational excellence. I work with my clients, to design structures and programs in their teams so that they, grow the people that they have, those talented humans. And then I absolutely love working with people who really deeply desire to be inspiring leaders and want to grow their impact as a leader. And so I bring all of that skill and experience, to what I do every day.
So what would you say when someone's coming to you, what would you say that is the main challenge that these people tend to be facing? Like, what is it that they're coming to you to get support with?
Yeah. So my clients come to me because they are at an inflection point in their business. They are really starting to feel or see or are really anticipating some pretty significant growth. They're feeling the burn, as I like it, right? Like the burnout. The burnout is, they're working 10 or 12 hours a day. That's starting to creep into weekends and evenings. They see the growth. They're planning for the growth. Maybe some of the growth is really beautiful and organic. Like they built something really magical and it's taking off. And they, as a business owner, are now really experiencing some of the pinch points. They are becoming the bottleneck, perhaps in their business. Again, it's creeping into their evenings and weekends. They're getting pushback from family and friends, and they really desire for their business to grow, but they're noticing that it's compromising some of the pieces that are important to them. They're likely doing a lot of work that they have no business doing and they don't love doing. Like they're getting pulled away from the stuff that's meaningful. They know they need to refocus. They know that they need to resource the right way. But of course, we don't get into business because we want to be a leader. We get into business because we have a product or service that we love.
Right.
And so
Right.
that's when they need me, is to come in and really help them strategically think about how they are going to resource the growth with talented people.
Right.
Really need to do that strategically. They need to do it intentionally and then execute. And that's what I help them do. So the growth becomes more smooth and seamless so that they get out of their own way, that they're not such a victim of their own success. That's the work that I do. That's the stuff I love. And that's what accelerates growth, growing organization.
And I can tell how passionate you are just talking about it. I mean, because I think like you're speaking to so many people when you're talking about this. There are so many people that are probably like putting their hands up right now and saying, "Oh my gosh, this is so me." As I think to your point, very, very few people start their business. Even if you started with a business plan, very few people are starting it with a strong sense of this is what growth is going to look like for me. They're more focused on here's how I'm going to launch it, and they get caught up in the day to day and they know they're going to need to hire at some point, but they're usually so ill-equipped to like figure out who they need to hire. I mean, I experience it with my clients all the time where they're like, I need to hire an admin, and we review the business. We're like, actually, no, you need to hire another you need to hire an operations person. You need to hire, someone else to be a worker bee doing some of the things that you're doing. So you mentioned about how there's a lot of times that they're doing things that they have no business doing. So how do you help them with figuring out where those hires are? Are you often working with them on their first hires or more like their 10th hire? Like where are you coming into this normally?
Yeah. So often my clients have some kind of team.
Okay.
And that could be a combination of contractors or consultants and also potentially part-time humans. And so some of them have had lesser, greater success in that space, right? They may have tried to hire in the past. Perhaps it's not gone well. We've all heard the horror stories.
Yeah.
Or they've heard the message you have to hire a VA or you need an OBM. And that, again, has worked out to greater or lesser degree. So you're right. They recognize there's a problem. You cannot clone humans yet. We don't actually have that technology, but they do recognize that there's more work than one human can do. And they're the human. And so, yes, usually my clients are coming to me and saying, I can't manage all, this is becoming unwieldy. It's becoming more than I can manage. I'm spending a lot of my time on HR related activities, on managing the business, on admin work. I'm not doing the things that add value or generate revenue, like business development, client service, right? Or some of the work that I love to do. The reason I started the dang thing in the first place. So they come and they know they have a problem, but they're just not quite sure they know how to fix it, or the fixes they've done in the past haven't been successful. That's when I step in and we create a people strategy. We talk about how we are going to strategically resource the work they're going to do.
I love the term people strategy, by the way, because I think that a lot of times when people are like, I need to hire and I need to grow, and all these terms don't have the people aspect into it. And you need a people strategy. I know, in my experience with my clients, to your point, many of them, most people, I don't think you can find a business owner who has not made a wrong hire at some point in their business. I mean, no one nailed it from the very beginning.
Nobody got had.
There's definitely times where people are like, oh, my first hire was perfect, but then your next hire, maybe not so much. And I mean, I know a lot of people, I often say they've hired what I call the warm body as that person who just kind of showed up, put their hand up and said like, hey, I'm available. Like, yeah, okay, you'll work. Without putting that strategy behind it. So where do you get started on this? Because I know that the ultimate goal is, like you said, to get them back to do what they love, to get them back to doing the highest value tasks for themselves and for their business, but also to get them out of those 10, 12, 16-hour days, to get them out of the evenings and weekends and, get back to a bit more of that life work balance, as you will. I like to call it work-life integration, because I don't love the term balance because there's no such thing. Just more of the, like, how do those two things integrate? But, that's obviously your ultimate goal is to get them there. So what are the steps that you're taking then to help them to achieve that?
Yeah. Yeah. And let me say, I completely agree. I think work-life balance is BS. I think that it absolutely fuels our saboteur
Yes.
around perfectionism and around high achievement and all of that. And I think that's the thing that actually keeps us stressed out and overwhelmed and burnt out. We'll have to have that conversation.
We're going to get into that. Yes. We're
That's different. Yeah, that's and what I love to do. So I've designed what I call People Strategy Accelerator. So I take business owners into a half day or full day session. And what we do is we actually unpack all of it. We get into the nitty gritty. What are your vision, mission, and values? Because those are absolutely crucial.
Mhm.
We have to understand what you're trying to create, where you're headed. That's your vision. What's your mission? What are you creating in the world? And what are your values? Because those are important underpinnings, not just for you as the business owner, but for your entire organization and your culture.
Absolutely.
And from there, we can actually think about what are the behaviors, right? So values are only relevant in so much as we live them every day. And that's how it shows up in what we do, how we behave.
Mhm.
We pull all that stuff out, we dust it off. Because often we've done that work and we're like, yeah, done. And we put it in a file and you're like, okay, so we pull that out, we dust it off, we take a look at it. Is this still relevant? Does this work? Is this meaningful? Does this really inform what we're doing here? And then we talk about what's your business plan? Where are you headed? What's the growth? What's the goals? What's the KPIs? What's the 1 year, 3 year, 5 year? What's the long-term vision? What do you want out of this thing?
Mhm.
That's really important. We got to understand that and have some clarity. Now, for most of us as smaller, medium-sized business owners, 10 years feels like a long time. So is it going to be really robust and detailed? Probably not.
Sure.
But we need to think all the way out there. At that point, we can actually then start to really think about what are the goals? What are we trying to accomplish maybe in the shorter term, maybe by the end of this year?
Mhm.
And we can think about how does that fit with the work that's being done now, both by us as a business owner, but also whatever team we might have. And I love to ask business owners at that point, what is the work that you should be doing and should not be doing?
Yeah.
What's the work that you really love to do? And do you want to do that? Or actually, is it time to give that up? Or what's the work that you don't like doing, but you need to keep?
Mhm.
So I always use the example that I don't like doing my own invoicing, but at this point, it actually doesn't make sense to pass that on to someone else because I just spend more time explaining it than I would actually doing it.
Right.
It's not that I love it, but I need to keep it. It's only half an hour once a month. I can figure it out.
Yeah.
So we get real granular with it. And from there, what actually becomes apparent is what are the different roles and activities. And we can start to understand what our structure might need to look like now and as we grow. And again, we can start to formulate a resource plan. So it's not, well, I saw on Instagram that some influencer said I need to hire a VA. It's, I actually need admin support, and this is what it needs to look like. So then if I decide that it is a VA, I actually am starting to really be clear about what I'm going to get them to do, what success will look like. And then I can start to think about what a recruitment strategy is, right? So it's all very linear in the way we process it. And what we get out of those strategy sessions is actually a map.
I love that. I love that. And I have to say, I'm like, you're speaking to the choir here. Anyone who's been listening to this podcast, if you go back a few episodes, we talked about building your vision, setting your goals, and identifying, what these short-term, long-term goals and such are. And it's so important for every aspect of your growth strategy, including that people strategy as well. But I love how you're talking about, breaking down those tasks, figuring out what it's going to look like. And yeah, like maybe you decide, okay, I need an admin, but as you start looking at the various activities they're doing, well, I'm going to need them to come into the office at least once a week. So therefore that VA no longer fits for that. And it's not a cookie cutter approach. There's no two businesses that are alike. Does it mean that you're going to give completely different strategies to everyone? No, there's always going to be some alignment. There's some similar principles at work, but each individual company and their culture is going to be different, and that's going to change what their needs are and how they're going to hire and what that strategy is going to look like. And I think this is so important because so many people, I think, jump the gun to, I need to hire, they do a job posting, they find a person, and then when it fails, they can't look back on that and say, that they failed it. It's the person wasn't right. And you know what? The person might not have been right, but maybe did you onboard them as well as you could have? Did you train them as well as you could have? Did you ensure that they had the skills necessary to do the job in the first place? Because if your expectations exceed their skill set, you're setting them up for failure. And that's not fair to either one of you, of course. You know, they don't want to go through, you know, a lot, I hate about business owners, we look at it as, well, I've invested time and money in this person, therefore I lost. They lost too. Whatever
That's true.
time they were working with you and they were training with you, yeah, it's sure they made money, but they lost out on opportunities to work in a place that was better suited for them. So you really want to get it right from the beginning as much as possible. And I mean, to your point earlier about the perfectionism that we have, you know, it's never going to be perfect. You're not, you're, like you said, you're not going to bat 1,000. Like I've made wrong hires even recently. You know, I know all the strategies and everything else. I still like, yeah, whoopsies, but
It's true. No, like the perfect hire doesn't exist. What we have to also layer into that is what's the culture that we want to create? And as soon as you hire your first person, you've got a culture. And culture is essentially how we get work done together. And so if we are unclear about how we want to get work done together in our business, then we struggle to find the right person who's going to add value to that. That's where the wrong hires come in. And I mean, I could go down the rabbit hole of recruitment. I happen to be a recruitment expert.
Right.
Again, business owners do not get into business to do the recruitment. And so once we've completed a people strategy and we have a map, then we can figure out when is the right time to hire for what role. We could get really clear, not just about who we're looking for, but how they work. So again, they fit in to our culture. What are the values that are going to be important? And we can design job descriptions that speak right to the heart of the top talent, that perfect candidate.
yeah.
And I will tell you, I just got a response from a client that I worked with. She has a business that's very specific, and we designed a job description together for her and a recruitment strategy. And she's gone and executed that. And she sent me a video the other day of an interview, and she said, go to minute 37. And they asked the candidate, why did you apply for the role? And the candidate said, I read the job description and I thought it was the perfect job for me.
Yeah.
I thought it was the best thing I'd ever read. I was compelled to apply for, and that's what we want, is we want to attract that right human that as they read, intimately get, it speaks directly to their soul, what we're trying to do. And so that's what's beautiful about it. And then we can hire those right people at the right time. We can onboard them in a way that's deeply meaningful, so they feel connected and successful right from the start, because it's so connected to who we are and how we do business. They are clear on the accountabilities because we've created something that is absolutely dialed in for them. And then we as leaders, we can actually guide them and give them really high quality feedback. And what we do is we create spaces of belonging. And that's what people want to do. They want to work in a place where they feel like they're really valued and heard, and they can contribute in a really meaningful way. They feel great doing that. That's ultimately what we want to create.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you talked about being a recruitment expert, but there's so much more to what you do than just recruitment. I think this is also, actually, I've talked with business owners where they said, I've hired a recruiting company. I got terrible leads from that. It didn't make sense. Well, of course, there's some great recruitment companies out there, but they don't understand it's so multifaceted. So the fact that you're working with them to create that initial strategy in the first place, so that when the recruitment happens, it is easier. But not only that, but then to your point, you've got to have that all the rest of the follow through. You've got to have the onboarding strategy. You've got to have that retention, those leadership skills to ensure that that person is going to be satisfied, happy, and eager to continue on with you. Otherwise, you're just right back there, and it always depends on what kind of roles they're hiring for. If you're looking to hire 100 people to work an assembly line, that's going to be a little bit different than if you want someone who's going to be an intimate part of servicing your clients on a day-to-day basis. Those are two very different hiring strategies.
100%. But ultimately, if you know what's important in your business and you then use that in terms of your recruitment strategy, you're going to hire better.
Yeah.
They're going to stay longer. They're going to make you more money. Like, the equation's very simple. When we hire the right people, we bring them into our business, and then we work really hard to help them be successful, engaged. They're happy. Well, happy candidates and ultimately happy employees create happy customers.
Right.
When we have happy customers, they bring us more money and more customers. And what inevitably happens is our revenue grows and our business scales. The equation is actually fairly simple. The execution is where we get tripped up.
Right.
But having a strategic approach to that, in the same way we have a business strategy, we have a marketing strategy, maybe we have a capital strategy. If we are strategic about the talent that we bring into the business, all those other pieces actually work better.
Absolutely. Yeah. And yeah, you're absolutely right. And so we talked about helping the business owner to be able to gain some of their essentially gain some of their life back, gain some of their passion back. I mean, I watch it happen to so many business owners. Growth is, you think launching the business is difficult. Growth is one of the most challenging things to face. Like it is just because it comes on like a tidal wave, and no matter how much you think you prepare for it, you're never properly prepared for it. And so now you've got this runaway train essentially that you're just trying to hang on for dear life. And it's sort of this like I've got all this business, but I can't actually accommodate it all, or I don't have enough business, but I'm busy all the time and I can't get up there to get more business. There's these gaps wherever they are in the organization. And then again, that kind of going back to the superhuman type of expectations that we have on ourselves, and so women especially that have this idea that somehow I'm going to be able to be all the things I need to be to my kids, to my spouse, to my partner, to my parents, to my friends, to my business as well. So how do you help them to navigate that part of it?
Yeah. So I love to do that in a one-to-one or small group context, because I think, first of all, that's really important. I think business owners need special attention. You need that space and that time actually to be able to work through all of that, like everything you just said, right? And that's one of the things we're actually terrible at. We'll spend money growing our business, but we won't spend money on growing ourselves. Well, guess how we become the bottleneck and the problem and the micromat? Like, ta-da. And so what I love to do is actually spend time really thinking about, what is actually important to you? Again, back to those values. They're so crucial in who we are, how we lead, and the businesses that we create. Like it really is. And we get so far removed from them sometimes. And when we can understand those values much more effectively, much more deeply, then we can start to think about, okay, what are the boundaries that we need in order to protect those values? So for example, for many of us, we have a family value. Well, that means something different to each one of us. We need to explore how we define that, how that shows up. Once we've done that, okay, well, how do we need to protect that family value? Well, I don't want to work after 5, and I don't want to work Saturday, but I'm okay working Sunday afternoon. Okay. So that we can start to build some boundaries around.
Right.
Then we can think about, okay, how do we need to make that real? That's where the personal work connects to the people strategy work, right? Because now what I need in order to be really fulfilled in my business and to do the beautiful work that I love to do and that adds that value, now I can make that real for myself. Doesn't mean there aren't moments. I mean, you talk about work-life integration. I call it work-life blend. We need to be able to move with the ebbs and flows of life and work. It's just simple.
Absolutely.
Like it's part of why we start these beautiful businesses in the first place. We want freedom and flexibility.
Well, yeah, and I think, in the most recent years, especially, there's been such an overlap due to, so many shutdowns and working from home, all these additional changes that have happened. There's so much more of that blend and that integration now than ever. And I think we've also changed a little bit about the mindset of it. And yet, as business owners, we still somehow think that we have to balance them, or that, they can't overlap the way that they need to. And meanwhile, employees are saying like, hey, I'm going to take a couple of hours off in the afternoon because I need to pick up my kid from school and do whatever. And employers are all so forgiving about that. And then when you're your own employer,
Yeah.
Your boss and those things are not around. You feel
Yeah.
guilty. Well, I feel guilty taking time off work to go to my kid's soccer game tonight. And then you also feel guilty that you're working late hours because you missed your kid's soccer game. So, I mean, like, it's how many different ways can you feel guilt, essentially? So you have to kind of figure out what those boundaries are and set some expectations, but also just be realistic of if you were not your own employer, if someone else was your employer, what would you expect that they would have some flexibility to it? And I mean, I have no problem telling my clients that I'm just not available at certain times, whether it's because I'm working on business stuff or not. I mean, family life happens, and your clients are going to understand. And you know what? I find that my clients especially are very much more endeared to me when they see the human aspect of, I am not a working machine. I am not a 24/7 robot. Essentially, I have real boundaries, I have real needs, and I have real social responsibilities. And even if those social responsibilities are to myself, so changing that conversation. And now I know that some of your lessons on this have come from some of your own personal experience as well. So you experienced burnout at one time. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. Yeah. I've had my experience with burnout a couple times. So that was part of me leaving my corporate role. I was working for a very toxic boss, and had spent a couple years actually just really hustling to please her. I'm a pleaser. I've always been that human. I always will be. And when I left that situation, I was completely burnt out. Like I went and had some testing done, and I literally had none of the vitamins or the minerals we need to survive in my bloodstream, except for iron, because I'd been taking an iron supplement because my doctor, right? So like that's not just the philosophical definition of burnout. Like it's the medical definition. And so it took me quite a while to recover from that, physically, mentally, spiritually. And then I've had experiences more recently where I've been like nose on the glass with burnout, to use a bit of a metaphor, like right
on the edge,
face right on the. And I recognized that, so often for me, especially, but I know other entrepreneurs will appreciate this. It comes from our saboteurs. That's our inner critic voice that is telling us that we are not enough. We're not working hard enough. We're not successful enough. We're not making enough money. We're not servicing our clients enough. We're not hustling.
And just do this one more thing. If I can just get one more job, if I could just get one more.
One more, because I'm not enough right now. And so I do a lot of that work, not only for myself, it's work that I have been doing for several years. I have a practice. I do it every single day. I take people through a 6-week program to really deeply understand, where is that conversation coming from? What does it cause in our life? Ultimately leads to burnout. But that guilt, you talked about the guilt we have. That's the saboteur. The saboteur causes guilt. It causes anger, frustration, anxiety, stress. And the truth is, once we can actually understand that conversation, we can rewire some neural pathways so that we can switch more effectively from guilt, anger, stress, burnout, overwhelm into a space where we can find gifts and opportunities. We can set down the work and recognize, I've done what I need to do today. This is enough, and I'm enough. That's really valuable work, again, that I do with my one-on-one clients, I do with small groups, because we all have that conversation. It sounds different for different people, but as entrepreneurs, ours is usually something around, I'm not working hard enough. I'm not successful enough. That's pretty common. It's really important we understand, where's that conversation coming from, and then have the tools to be able to combat that. And in fact, what that does is help us be more resilient in those, on the entrepreneurial roller coaster that we're all on. We can recover faster. That's really powerful work.
And you know what I really like that you said there too, because I acknowledge this all the time, for all the things that I talk about when it comes to, say, time management strategies or hiring strategies, or all these strategies that just because we have all these strategies and we have this toolbox of things, doesn't mean we're immune to not pushing ourselves, not doing the wrong things. Like it's we're all gonna at some point make some mistakes because we are human and we are imperfect. So I love that you've talked about, you understand burnout, you understand the language of it, you've experienced it firsthand, you've got all these tools to prevent it. And it doesn't mean that you're not going to find yourself, as you said, with your nose pressed up against the glass because you've just taken things just a little too far. But what the tools have done for you is it allows you to recognize it sooner. So you're not pushing yourself over the edge.
Yes.
Obviously, it'd be great if you didn't get to the edge in the first place, but
Right.
we are not perfect.
No, it happens.
It's going to happen, but you can pull yourself
Yeah.
back, and the challenges and the repercussions of it are going to be so much more minimized because you've got the tools to be able to recognize that. And I say that all the time. I mean, I talk about stress management all the time,
Yeah.
and I've got some great tools in my toolbox to manage stress. It doesn't mean that a few weeks ago, did I not find myself just like in an absolute stressed out moment? Just because I can manage stress doesn't mean I don't get stressed. There's a big difference. Just because you know how to manage burnout doesn't mean you're not pushing yourself towards burnout at times. It's just that, having those tools and understanding it better. And I think there just needs to be more of a conversation surrounding this, because I think women especially have gotten to the point where we just accept that this sense of overwhelm, this sense of stress, this sense of not being good enough is just a part of life. And I think we've gotten so comfortable with that being a part of things that it's just like this little extra thing we're carrying around on a daily basis. And it doesn't need to be that way. It really doesn't.
Totally. I was actually out for a walk with a business owner. We've been partnered for 6 years. Her and I started our businesses at the same time. We worked together the whole time. And we were out for a walk with our dogs a couple Fridays ago. And she's been through the burnout process. And I said to her, why didn't you call me? like literally, this is what I do. Yeah, I'm right here. Like, if there was anybody you could trust, it was me. Like, we've been doing this together. We've been walking this path. And what she said to me, and this was super profound, was, I didn't know if it was burnout or if it was just a part of, and so you totally nailed it. That's exactly what she said to me. Like, I couldn't tell the difference until it was too late. Mm-hmm. And then I kind of had to burn my business to the ground and almost start over. And I said to her, that to me is such a crying shame, because you actually don't need to get to the place where you're ready to have a complete meltdown. There's an opportunity to step away from the edge, take a couple deep breaths, and then figure out what you need to do. Now, we don't, sometimes we're not aware.
Yeah, well, and here's the thing. I could post 50 articles about burnout. We could do all these podcast episodes. I could put the title of this saying that this is all about burnout. And there are going to be a lot of people who are going to look at that and say, oh, that's not for me. I don't have burnout. And they're going to move on. Because the problem with burnout is, I see it's very much like physiotherapy. If you've ever done PT for any sort of injury you've had, when you're injured, you're all about like, I'm going to do my physio every single day. I'm going to do it 6 times a day. I'm going to get myself healed. And as you start to heal, you don't have that pain trigger anymore. And without that pain trigger, you get a little lax on the exercises. Yeah. With burnout, it needs to be a part of the conversation before you're actually experiencing it. And I think
yes,
once you've experienced it, you build up those tools and you can make yourself so much more resilient so that you're not pushing yourself to that point again. But wouldn't it be amazing if we could make it so that so many more people are just not getting to burnout in the first place? But the challenge is that we're not having enough of the conversations to make people aware of what's leading them to burnout and the types of language in our culture, even just the word hustle. I can't stand the word hustle because it makes it sound as though you sacrifice everything to reach some big goal that you never actually reach because you keep moving, the goalpost on it. And so if we can have a better conversation and better language and more conversations like this that just help people to realize this, to your point of, your friend who's saying, well, I didn't know I was at getting to burnout, because there's going to be so many people who are listening to us right now saying that's not me.
Yeah. Yeah. It is you. If you're listening and you don't think it's you, it is you.
Yeah.
You're already on the path. Because every business owner is somewhere along that trajectory. What you need to think about is, how are you compromising your values? How are you not living the important pieces of your life? What are you sacrificing? Like, and if you want to think deeply about those things for a moment, you could probably place yourself on the spectrum of burnout. What's your stress level, right? All of those things are important. What's your inside voice saying to you? Like that inner critic, is it telling you that it's never enough? You need to work harder, that you're not successful, that, get back to work. Don't celebrate that. Yeah, great. You won today, but you need to get back to work tomorrow. If that's the conversation that's happening in your head, you are on the path to burnout.
Other thing I would add to that is if you are looking around you and feeling like everyone around you is an idiot and no one else can do things properly, and therefore you've got to do all these things yourself, that is often a sign of burnout as well, because you just don't have the objectivity. You got that irritability is right at the surface at all times, that you're not looking at what people are doing well. You're looking for issues everywhere.
Yep.
You're finding yourself doing that. You're finding yourself snapping at people where you didn't normally have such a short fuse. That is a very, very clear sign that you are either approaching or experiencing burnout.
I think that's a really great call out. And I think there's so many pieces that we ignore. And doing that work with a business owner who is saying to me, I'm feeling the burn. I'm feeling exhausted. I'm feeling overwhelmed. I've lost my objectivity. Maybe, a lot of my clients are in real creative spaces. They feel like they've lost the vibe, right? The juice isn't flowing. If that's the way you're feeling, yeah, you're on the path to burnout. And there are absolutely some spectacular ways to step back and reevaluate and then move forward in a really productive way. And it's not about taking your foot off the gas pedal. In fact, the reflection and the rest is really important. And I honestly, I say this all the time. You have to rest as hard as you work. And
Absolutely.
if you are not resting, if you're not actively seeking to take rest in a meaningful way, you are on the path to burnout.
And that's where guilt comes in as well. We feel guilty if we are resting. But here's the thing. Let's say that, you look at your task list of, I got, these 3 other things I need to get done. And if I just spend another hour working, I'll get those things done. Here's the thing. You go take a 15-minute break, you come back, they'll complete both things in 45 minutes. It didn't take you any more time, right? Yeah. But you got that rest and you got that mental break. There's a fantastic book. I'm going to completely screw up the author name, so I'm not even going to attempt it. But the name of the book is Rest, and it's by an author. First name is Alex. Again, I'm going to screw up the last name, but I will put it into the show notes for anyone who's interested. But it talks about some of our most productive innovators in history and how they were so disciplined about incorporating rest into their daily routine. So it goes to show that like these people who are these high producers, they did incorporate rest. You look at the top performing, strategists today, they are all taking their rest. They all understand the importance of it. Every performer, every athlete. They understand the value of rest. Yes, they're going to work hard when they're working, but they're going to rest hard as well, because you've got to let your body recharge.
You do. You need to make the investment in yourself as a business owner. We hear the word, just like work-life balance, we hear the word self-care, right? Such a buzzy phrase.
Yeah.
And actually rest is self-care, but also working with a coach is self-care. Going to the gym, that's self-care, but what about your mental muscles? Having great strategies, that's self-care too. Like all of these pieces are actually about caring for yourself. Delegating in a really meaningful way, that is caring for yourself. It's also caring for your business at the same time. Yay, 2 birds, 1 stone, woohoo! But I think that's the other thing we need to do, is just completely redefine this idea of what self-care and caring for yourself means. Again, it's likely to look a little bit different for each and every one of us.
Right.
Self-care for me is taking Friday off and going and spending that with my 2 little grandsons. That's self-care, right? That
recharges you. Yeah.
Exactly. I get to be someone different. And you know what? They inspire me because they're almost 4 and almost 2. They're absolutely bananas, but they look at the world very differently.
Yeah. And
It's
that's going to
so
fill your cup though, too. You're also going to, you don't, instead of regretting and feeling like you're not showing up,
yeah.
you feel like, okay, I was an integral part of their lives at a very critical time in their growth.
Yes, exactly. It's an investment in myself as much as it's an investment in them.
Yeah. No,
I
I
think
love,
that's what we have to think about. It's not self-care, but like self-investment,
yeah.
right?
Yeah. I think I love the idea. We talk about investing in ourselves when it comes to taking a course or hiring a business coach, but investing in yourself doesn't always have to have that little professional development attached to it. It can have personal development as well in so many ways in terms of, yeah, how are you caring
Yeah.
for yourself and creating that self-care strategy. And again, this goes back to the overwhelm and the burnout that we were talking about. This is all stress management at its core. And you need to have the tools to be able to do that. And I always say stress management is a daily habit. It is not
Yeah.
something that you only use when you're stressed. Okay. All of the things that you need to manage your stress, if you're not doing it throughout the day, that pot starts bubbling up a little bit, right? And eventually it is going to spill over. Whereas if you are practicing stress management every day throughout the day, and you're keeping things at a nice even keel, it gives you better brain capacity to be able to make better decisions. It allows you to be more present for things, to get those creative juices flowed. There's so many benefits to it. And I think it's such a shame that I don't think we're talking about it nearly enough, but I love that it's such an integral part of the coaching that you do, the training that you do, and part of the lifestyle that you live every day as well. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I do my best. Like we said, nobody's perfect.
No, my perfect.
So yeah, you bet I do.
And
You
you've
bet
actually you've got a workbook, a work-life balance is BS workbook. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, so I believe so strongly in this that I decided to create a workbook about it.
Okay, tell me about this. Yeah.
Yeah, so this workbook is designed to help everyone who opens it up really think about what are the important pieces, right? Go back to those values. What is important to you? Think about what is your purpose, like your personal purpose. What are you on this planet? Like, what are you even doing here? It's the question I ask my clients. And then really think about what do you need to blend together?
Right.
Where are places you need to flex so that you can actually create something that is meaningful just for you and that you can really understand when are the moments you need to be more present in your business? When is it the right time to hit the gas pedal and work harder? And then when are the moments when, in fact, you need to step back and you need to be more present in your life? And when we leverage our values to help us define that, it becomes a deeply meaningful experience. And then we start to recognize that we don't have to have every slice of the pie cut exactly the same,
Mm-hmm.
that those slices of the pie can change from day to day, right? And,
That's
and
absolutely right. Yeah.
we can craft something that really enables us to feel successful in all the different aspects of who we are. The boss, the business partner, the life partner, if you will, mom, grandma, for me, auntie. I have some little people in my life that are really important to me,
Yep.
right? My friends, my BFF, who I need to see when I'm with her, like all of those things. And I can think about it really carefully. So that's what the workbook is all about, is just giving you the opportunity to define some of those key pieces and then build the blend that's going to be just deeply, deeply satisfying for you.
That's beautiful. And I think, so many entrepreneurs start their business with the goal of flexibility, with the goal of being able to work on their terms. And then they find themselves in this state of overwhelm, working all these hours. And like, isn't that exactly what you were trying not to do in the first place? So,
Right.
like, yeah, let's get back to what our original intentions were, what our original goals were. And, I really wish that I'd love to say that we can help everyone on the ground level when they're first getting into entrepreneurship to avoid all these pitfalls. But the reality is that unfortunately, I think that you kind of got to start experiencing things before you know. Like it's, you don't look, but you don't know, unfortunately. And I mean, I can tell people. I remember when I was starting a business, people are like, "Do you know what you're getting yourselves into?" I mean, this is going back 17 years now. Entrepreneurship wasn't what it is today. Not that it didn't exist, of course, but it wasn't quite as celebrated. When someone heard you were becoming an entrepreneur, it was a little bit like, are you sure you want to do that? So I remember so many people saying, like, do you understand what it's like to run a business? And I remember my response was always the same. I believe I have a good understanding as to how much work it's going to be, but I also recognize that no matter how hard I think it's going to be, I know it's going to be harder because I can't put myself into that actual situation until I'm there. And that's the reality of it, that you've almost got to be running your business for at least a little bit of time before you can really recognize where you need some support, where you need that help, and where you're maybe falling short. But the important thing is to allow yourself to be able to do that self-reflection and do it without punishing yourself, without judgment of yourself, being kind to yourself, because there's no fingers to point. There's no blame to be placed when you find yourself in these situations. It is just a culmination of various circumstances that led you to where you are. And the important thing is that you're recognizing it and you're taking those steps towards bringing yourself to a better place that you can be all the things you need to be. Yeah,
Totally. I mean, we don't start out wanting to short our family or lack presence. We're not mercurial in that way. We land there because we might lose sight of what's important.
sure.
We don't start out. And so we do need to give ourselves that space of empathy that we want to build something really beautiful. We have a really important mission. We've got a vision that is really present. And because of that, we are driven to do this work we feel so deeply connected to. We need to give ourselves some empathy that this is actually coming from a really good place.
Right.
It sometimes doesn't show up very well. That's the problem, is the behaviors.
Right.
Right? So I think when we can give ourselves a little empathy that this is just so damn important to us, that we get pulled down the rabbit hole, as they say, then we can move forward and think about, okay, now what do I need to do in order to fix where I'm at?
Right.
But honoring the fact that it comes from such a place of energy and passion is important.
To sort of steal a line from another well-known program, the first step is admitting you have a problem.
Yeah, for real.
And it really is, the first step is you've got to take that acknowledgement. I mean, if you keep saying, well, it's not my fault, it's because so-and-so did this, or this circumstance happened, or whatever. And it's not, again, I'm not looking, there's no fingers to be pointed. I'm not saying it is your fault, but you can't place the blame randomly everywhere else either. It has to be just an acknowledgement of, like, this is the situation. Doesn't matter how you got there. There's zero value to regretting or focusing on what got you there. I shouldn't say zero value. There is some value in being able to recognize, so you know how to prevent
you have to reflect, right?
You have to reflect, but there's no point in dwelling on, well, if this hadn't happened. No. What's done is done. What can you do from this day forward? What can we control at this moment and in the future?
Yeah. If you want to own the business, the accountability ultimately lives with you. And I know that sounds a little bit heartless, but the truth is, you wanted to start the business. You want it to grow. This is yours.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to own all of it.
All of it.
You cannot lay blame at other people's doorsteps simply because it's not working for you. Right. You need to own the part that belongs to you. And if you can't do that, then perhaps entrepreneurship is not the right level for you. Yeah. Maybe you need to go back into a corporate job.
Yeah.
But if you want to own the business, own all of it. The good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah.
And from there, then you can start to reflect on, what was my part of that? What do I need to own? What do I need to leave behind? Where are the gifts and the opportunities for me? Because there's always something to be learned or gained, or a door opens and a window closes, all of that. Mm-hmm. But if you do not have extreme ownership, you won't be able to access all of that. That's the tricky.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, thank you. It's been fantastic. Listen, you have your own podcast as well. Tell our listeners about your podcast.
Yeah. Well, I can't wait to have you as a guest. But we're starting season 4. The podcast has a bit of a name change. It is the Female Founder Unplugged podcast. And we absolutely love the conversations that are created in that space where we're unplugged, where we can be just like, I mean, I'm going to age myself, but back in the day, the MTV,
MTM plug, yeah.
right? Artists would show up and they would just sing the song with a guitar, like, no, like, and that's what it's all about. Having real conversations that are very authentic, they're very granular, they're very gritty, really getting into some of the issues or problems that my guests are facing, particularly around leadership, people strategy, talent management, bringing some of those situations onto the podcast, really talking them through to see if there's some solutions in there. And of course, having my guests share their journey as female founders, because I think there's so much power and presence in that.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited that we're going to do that in an unplugged way. It's going to be so beautiful and real.
I love that. And yeah, I mean, the term unplug definitely resonates with me for some of the younger generations. It's all about the hashtag no filter kind of style. Like,
There you
you know,
go.
that authenticity is really going to come through with that. Well, thank you so much. So listen, if people want to find you, how do they find you?
Yeah, so you can come and find me on Instagram. My handle's at High Volt Leadership. I'm on LinkedIn, Lindsay White. And you can find me on my website, highvoltageleadership.ca.
Perfect. And that work-life balance is BS workbook. And you can find that at highvoltageleadership.ca/program-people-strategy. I will put that into the show notes as well, so anyone can go on there and grab it. And that's a free workbook. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Amazing.
Free. Download it, work through it. Let me know if you have any questions about it. Would love to hear your feedback.
Love it. Well, Lindsay, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. This has been a wonderful conversation.
I so appreciate you. So listen, if you're listening to this podcast right now and what we're saying is resonating with you, you know, we've got great guests like this all the time. Please tune in. Please leave us a review, subscribe to us, and, you know, wherever you get your podcast, but also share us with someone else that you think might benefit from this conversation. I'll bet you that every person listening to this episode right now knows about at least one other business owner who can probably benefit greatly from hearing some of the real raw truths that Lindsay shared with us today. So I hope that you will continue to listen and we'll continue to share this podcast. And until next time, everyone, keep thriving.